where I've been and who I am, all the ways I've grown.
This isn't self-help, it's a full-on rebirth. Welcome to Girl Wake Up, the podcast for women who are done playing small, staying silent, or living by rules they never wrote. I'm Amy Polacko, journalist, divorce and life coach, and freedom warrior, and I'm here to help you take your power back. Because the system isn't going to save us. We need to save ourselves. So grab your coffee, your courage, and maybe a few curse words. It's time to wake up. Welcome to Girl Wake Up, everybody. Starting over isn't a failure, ladies. It's actually a power move. It's what happens when a woman decides she's no longer available for a life that doesn't fit. And I want to add to that, also maybe not available for the people who don't fit her life either, right? Mm-hmm. So today I'm joined by Olivia Howell, who's redefining what it means to begin again with intention, independence, and confidence. Olivia is a nationally recognized divorce educator, clinical hypnotherapist, and the CEO and co-founder of Fresh Starts Registry with her sister, Jenny. And that is the premier expert-led divorce support network. Her writing has appeared in New York Magazine, Newsweek, and Business Insider. And she is frequently quoted in the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and Scary Mommy, among many others, right, Olivia? When she's not advocating for people rebuilding their lives, you can find her crafting or listening to her favorite 90s music. Welcome, Olivia.
Thanks, Amy. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a huge fan of yours.
Oh, thank you. I have to tell everybody I am one of the Fresh Starts experts, and I love the community you've created for those of us working to empower people, right? Around divorce, breakups, life transitions, and especially new chapters, which we're talking about today.
Yes. But we are so happy when you joined the community, because I've been following you for years on your writing and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, it's Amy. She's part of our community. So we're really happy to have you.
Oh, thank you. So I want to start by you telling our listeners, what was your wake up moment, Olivia?
Oh gosh. Well, I would say my wake up moment started the minute my husband said he was leaving, actually. I mean, that's maybe pretty common, but we had a pretty traditional marriage, 2 little boys, a house, literally white picket fence. And, things were not great. We were married for like 8 years. And, some marriages end slowly, some marriages end quickly. I think mine was like a simmering pot that kind of just exploded. And so we'd had a big fight, and then he came home from work that day and I was making dinner. And he's like, I think I need to leave. And I go, where? Where are you going? And he's like, no, leave. And I was like a divorce. And it was like in that moment that I realized I was actually getting everything I wanted. And I knew that it was in that second, whatever I responded next was going to make or break the rest of my life. And so I took a second. I was cooking. We were on a Whole30 together, and I had the spatula in my hand, and I just stood there looking at him and thought, okay, well, this is a good thing. So I'm going to respond like it's a good thing. And it was actually a lovely moment between us. We were young when we got married and very different people. The shit hit the fan after that moment, but that was really, I could see it was like sliding doors, right? It was like, okay, how I respond in this second is going to change me. And it did, for the better.
Wow, that's an incredible story. Yes. And I remember saying to some of my clients that, I felt like this gray cloud just kind of like went away. Not to say that divorce is easy, but it is worth it, right?
Yes.
In many, many ways. Fresh Starts Registry isn't about stuff, right? It's about intention. And I'm wondering, what were you seeing in women's lives and maybe some of the things you experienced going through this that made you build this?
First of all, I love that you said that, because nobody's ever led with that. And I really appreciate it. I come from a huge family of divorce. My grandparents were all divorced. My parents were divorced. I joke that I became a divorce expert at 10. I really was like the one that was helping my parents through their divorce. And I've been writing about this for 30 years. And even so, I felt really alone, and I had so much familial support. I had my parents, my siblings, my grandparents, but I just felt isolated and alone and like shame, a lot of shame. And I thought, well, if I have all this support and I financially can swing this and I'm going to be fine, how is everybody else doing this? And when you went on, this was 5 years ago almost, when you went online to look for divorce support, it was all just really scary legal information. And so I wanted to create a one-stop shop that would help you completely rebuild your life. So the items to rebuild your life and the experts to rebuild your life and the education. I think a lot of people, you know this, Amy, but a lot of people don't realize women often leave with nothing. And we are open for everybody. We do support men and women and Muppets and all the good things. But I always like to say, but often it is women that come to us and they have to downsize or they have to move and they literally don't have funds to get their kids cereal bowls or, a mattress. And I was in the registry industry a long time ago. My first marketing client was a baby registry. And so I knew a little bit about what it took to get to people and what people were looking for rebuilding their life in transitional times. And I thought, well, I needed a new toothbrush holder and I needed these little stupid things that I just didn't want to buy for myself, but my sister bought for me. And I was like, well, why can't we do this for other people? And then on the flip side, I knew that going through a divorce has so many experts that you need to have support you. So we called them your hype team because they hype you up. And I wanted a place you could come back and know that anybody that you came to at Fresh Starts was vetted and safe and inclusive and shame-free, right? We look at divorce shame-free. And if you look at our messaging alongside some other different divorce platforms, we don't talk about what your ex did and we're not anti-men or anti-whatever. We're really focused on you and your healing and your fresh start and you're moving forward. And that's something that we're incredibly passionate about with what we do. We're very human centric. We don't collect user data on anybody. We wanted a really safe place for people to come to the website. We don't make you put your email address in or your phone number in or all those things. You can just come get the education and support.
I think of Fresh Starts Registry as this warm hug
that
people need. I really do. And, it reminds me that one of the most touching emails I ever received was from one of my coaching clients who sent me a picture of her new apartment. It was like a blow up mattress on the floor with a phone and a lamp. And she said, my first night of peace. Thank you. And one of the things she did that was super smart, I shared on social media, is that she stockpiled some of this stuff in a storage unit until that time,
So smart.
Anything you can do to get ready, I think is really important. And today we're talking about how this truly is a power move, right?
Yes,
and
it
it's
is.
framing it that way. So I'm wondering what you think about the fact that we're taught a lot of the times that starting over means something went wrong, and who benefits from that narrative? I mean, to me, it seems like people who want to keep you in unhealthy relationships, right? But what's your take? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, Amy, 100%. So we actually do a lot of writing about what a fresh start is. We're writing a book right now. And in the book, it even says, the moment you decide to have a fresh start is the most powerful moment of your entire life. And that's when the journey begins. And that gives me chills every time to think about it.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, because we always think about like a fresh start as I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm also a language person. I studied Latin for many years. So for me, everything is through language. When we can reframe that beginning as a fresh start instead of a beginning again or a healing process, there's nothing to fix. There's nothing broken about you, right? We're just deciding to turn to a new page of the book, and that's okay. That's what books are made for, right? And so you get to decide at your fresh start journeys. Like we always say, put your boots on and grab your snacks. It's kind of like wild, right? And you're going out there and you get to decide what is the roadmap ahead of me. And that is incredibly powerful. And yes, the people that benefit from you staying small are benefiting from you staying small. And I always say, if somebody is going to shame you about your decision, they have an agenda. There's something that they're trying to get out of you, whether it's to stay in the relationship, whether it's their own ego, but you get to go out and be that free feral woman and decide what your next move is going to be.
Right. And I think, look, we celebrate anniversaries and bar mitzvahs and graduations and babies and all these things. Why not celebrate a divorce? I love looking at divorce cakes. I think some of them are so
They're great.
hilarious.
I know. And we love divorce parties. And divorce parties for us represent, it's not just I think that there's a lot of misconceptions, right, with celebration of divorce. It's not that you're celebrating the divorce. You're celebrating the bravery and the courage. And I love divorce parties because you're celebrating the people that helped you through all of that also. And so you're turning the table a little bit and saying, let's celebrate how we all went through this to get me to the end point here. So yes, there is a lot of celebration to be had in making brave decisions.
I'm so curious, Olivia. You have your fingers on the pulse, you and your sister, of what's going on in the divorce world. What trends are you seeing right now in divorce and singlehood? And I wrote an article for Newsweek recently on why women are staying single. And I'm curious what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very much like what you're seeing, Amy, that the competition isn't between, a man or a woman and another partner. It's between them and peace, right? And a peaceful, quiet life. And that is beautiful. And, I see so many people joking like, oh no, I'm going to get to 40, 50 years old and get to live with my cats and play music loud and do my nails whenever I want. Shucks, what a horrible life.
Exactly.
But I think that there's definitely a trend of it doesn't have to be bad for it not to be good, is a line that my sister always says, because she was kind of in that type of relationship and her engagement ended. And he was a fine guy. He just wasn't her guy, right? And I think that with all of the healing, a lot of like Gen Z and millennials are doing, there's a lot of just owning your own story, right? And saying like, I don't need to be in this relationship for any reason except that this person makes me feel good. And if they're not making me feel good, then why am I in this relationship, right? And so, but obviously gray divorce is on the rise. And what I find interesting about that is that not only are these women, deciding after years and years of marriage that they deserve more, they're watching their daughters and sometimes their granddaughters, right, go through these fresh starts and thinking, she's living it up in Paris. I can do that, right? Like I've worked my ass off my whole life. So there's a lot of generational healing that's going on. And I think that the overarching theme I'm seeing is that we need to be telling our stories, right? When we can tell our stories like you, Amy, and write about this stuff, we're giving people the words that they're like, oh, I didn't know other people went through this. This is not okay in my household. And that's something I'm really passionate about doing. And I can see people are like, I didn't know anybody else went through this horrible thing. And now I'm realizing like this was not okay the way that I was treated. And I have a lot of consults with women that are like, I found you online because I resonated with this thing you wrote. And I didn't know that it wasn't okay to be iced out of my relationship 3 days after I had a baby or whatever it was. So I think, we're just talking about things more and that's going to change a lot.
Yeah, I do think that the younger generations are inspiring the older ones in the great divorce because you see the data. A lot of young women say they don't even want to get married anymore. And as for the great divorce ladies, I love not only helping them create this new chapter, but exploring, do they want to open a business? I've helped some of them do that. Do they have a passion project? They want to get back into the workforce. A lot of them have given so much to their families, right? And put themselves last for so long that I think, to your point, once they get that peace and they're in their new place and it could just be a 1-bedroom apartment, could be a studio. They're just like, I am going to protect this if my life depends on it, because it does.
It does. Yeah. And like you start to see yourself coming back to life and your children coming back to life. It's real hard to go back from that.
Right. Exactly. And, I'm wondering, what do you think women are most afraid of when they're starting over? Because someone might be listening and thinking like, okay, this sounds great, but I'm scared.
I think that money is obviously the biggest factor for most people. But I actually think it is and it isn't money, right? It is money. Obviously, we need money. We live in a capitalist society and you need money to pay rent and pay bills. But also, I still think there's a lot of shame that is, under the covers with divorce. And I always think my mom said to me when I was going through my divorce, she said, it's the thing that you fight the hardest for, and all you're left at the end is a basket of shame. And like,
Mhm.
you just, there's still this stigma around it. And I think that it's so interesting. You probably get this too, Amy. Women come to me and they go, why is it that like almost 50% of first marriages end in divorce? And yet I don't know anybody that's gotten divorced because they're not talking about it. Right.
Mhm.
And I think that, again, we need to be talking about this more. But if somebody's listening to this and they're scared, I would say the best thing to do is reach out to Amy or somebody like her, right? That can just chat with you and say, like, this is a strategy. We're going to get a plan, because there's a lot of people that know a lot more about divorce, and they'll help you along the way.
There's a lot of talk these days about the quiet divorce and the silent divorce, and I really believe it's so dangerous and detrimental because we see all the time in our work the physical effects. I've seen autoimmune diseases, cancer, stress, heart issues, weight loss. Some of these women look 20 years older than they are because of the stress they're going under.
Yeah.
And once they get out of that situation, they start looking and feeling better.
Yeah, it's so true, because it's all about your nervous system,
Mhm.
right? And so even with a quiet divorce, who's still doing the emotional labor? Who's doing the domestic labor, right? Who's doing all of the decision making? And are you tiptoeing around your house still for somebody else, right? So if you can't live in peace and be able to sing out loud and dance and be free, then your nervous system is on high alert and you're not sleeping well, you're not digesting food well, you're living in survival, and that's not the way to be. And not to say, because I get this comment a lot, and I'm sure you do too. A lot of women say, well, if I have to co-parent, I'm still, not fully free. And that is true. But there is something to be said about having your own space to decompress in that I think is
Mhm.
really, really important.
Exactly. And there are boundaries you can have, right? I work
Yes.
with clients all the time. You don't need to answer. Like
Right.
it's reestablishing yourself, taking your power back. That's what we're all about here on Girl Wake Up, right?
Yep.
Is that you have that power. And going back to the money thing, Olivia, what do you think is a big misconception women have about money and finances, either going through divorce or post divorce as they are experiencing their fresh start?
Well, I think that we haven't really talked about the fact that divorce has a lot of options to it, right? So you're
Mhm.
not just going to court and spending $100,000 on, a court case. There's
Mhm.
so many other options now, right? There's online divorces, there's mediators, there's legal experts that can help you do pro se, right, and do it yourself. There's so many ways that you can do this that are not going to be the same thousands and thousands of dollars. And I think that's a really important option to just keep in mind. I also think that sometimes it takes a little bit of investment up front with somebody like a divorce coach to
Mhm.
help you end up saving a lot of money down the line, right? Because you're going
Mhm.
to want to strategize and plan before you get into the lawyer who's charging you much more than the divorce coach is going to charge you.
Right, right.
And then I always like to say I talk to a enormous amount of women who have not had income for many, many years.
Mhm.
We really need to just be smart about the way that we're bringing cash in, because joining a multi-level marketing thing not going to help you, right? Starting
Mhm.
an Etsy shop, while it's lovely, it's not going to bring in quick cash.
Mhm.
What can you do? Can you babysit kids? Can you do people's laundry? Can you go work at the school? Can you do all of these things just to start bringing in some money? Because yes,
Yes.
it's not going to be a full income, but it's going to start to empower you.
Right. I agree 100%. And a lot of these women have been experiencing financial abuse that I'm
Yeah.
dealing with, obviously. And many of them gave up great careers, but now their skills are needing a little refresh, to
Yeah.
keep using
Yeah.
that word, right? And
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of them fighting for that in their divorce decree. Should be entitled to going back to
Yes.
school for something or getting a certification, because a lot of times that stay-at-home spouse, whether it's a woman or a man, but
Hmm.
we more often see it as a woman,
Yeah.
gave up so much so the other partner could
Yeah.
climb the corporate ladder or build an independent business or whatever
Hmm.
it was, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what does it look like to start over without explaining yourself to everyone, right? And we talked about the shame part in the beginning, Olivia, and I have to tell you, I've been divorced twice. I mean, the shame was double the second time, right? That's why I went to 4 marriage counselors, because I thought, how can I be divorced a second time? Like, people are going to be like, what's wrong with her? Right? Because, admittedly, years ago, I probably judged someone who was divorced twice, right?
Yep.
So, I think it's getting better these days with the books and the articles and the buzz about divorce. But what do you think?
Well, first of all, I just want to say this to that point is that I come from a whole matriarchal line of divorce. And so sometimes, once in a while, I'll stop and go, God, all of these women in my family were divorced, and I have to take a second. And I'm in this industry. I do this every day. And I still have to take a second and say, no, we're going to reframe this. I come from a line of powerful women who decided to rewrite their narrative and choose something better for themselves. And that's what you did too, Amy. And that's how I view it.
That.
And that's how I view it. So in terms of what it looks like to have a fresh start, that quiet, fresh start, whenever somebody comes to me, whether it's a job change or a divorce or separation, I always give my piece of advice first is go back and listen to the music you listened to when you were 14. Because I feel like, when you were 14 is when you were really starting to find kind of that inner who you were. And just start with music. That's what I always like to say, right? Put music on when you're cleaning, when you're waiting in the car for the kids. Often when you are in a deliberation space of like, I don't know if my marriage is good or whatever, you don't listen to music because music can make you emotional. And so bring music back into your life. That's going to really start to be a place that you can find yourself again. And then just be incredibly kind and gentle with yourself because fresh starts are about you and you decide what comes next, but you have to really nurture, right? So snuggle up in bed an hour earlier and watch Nick at Night, right? Or make yourself those cookies or just be goofy with your kids because you want to be, right? Letting your nervous system calm down is going to be a huge key in that fresh start. We offer so many free resources. A lot of them are free meditations and hypnoses from our experts. And I always like to say, use any free resources, whether it's Amy gives them to you or I give them to you, and use them. They're there for you and start to really recalibrate your nervous system because you cannot have a fresh start if your nervous system is still in survival mode. So we got to start really quiet and subtle and just being kind to yourself and bringing some of that peace back into your life.
I think that is amazing, amazing advice. I want to move on to this segment we have here on Girl Wake Up, Olivia, where I share a common societal message women hear, right? And I want you to react to it. It's called, fact or trap, or truth or trap, rather. And here we go. You should wait until you feel confident before making a big change.
Oh, gosh. I think that it's not about confidence, but I'm going to go back to what I just said. It's about your nervous system. So before making a big change, I think it's really important to think about what your body feels. Right. So where are you? Are you feeling anxious? Is your heart racing in not a good way? Do you feel calm? I know for me, when I feel calm about a decision, that's usually the best decision to make. Right. We sometimes misconstrue butterflies in our stomach for excitement when it's actually nerves. Right. So thinking about that, but also confidence is a thing that you can build over time. And that's actually something we talk a lot about with the registry. If you can pick out a new shower curtain for yourself, as silly as that sounds, that's going to help build your confidence to picking something else out and then deciding on a lawyer and all of these things. So I think that if you're making a big decision, it's always great to talk to somebody in your life, right? And say, I just need a mirror for a second. You don't have to give me advice. Can I just say this out loud? Saying things out loud is going to really have you hear the truth or not the truth, right? If you're trapped or the truth. And so say it out loud and see how your body feels. And if you're still feel confident in that decision, go for it. If you don't have a hell yeah, then don't go for it.
That is great advice because I find I'm working with women all the time, right, who are vacillating. And I've been there. A lot of us go back. It takes on average 7 times to leave an unhealthy relationship. And I find that for some, something hits them like in a guttural way. And sometimes it's something's happening to their children, or their partner says or does something that you just feel, I've got to get out of here. Right. So I think that is so true. And when you're in an abusive relationship, they're, breaking you down so you don't trust that inner voice. So we help you build that back. Right, Olivia?
Exactly. Yes, you need that.
So we got a letter from one of our listeners that actually ties into what we're talking about. She said, "Hi, Amy. I know I need to leave. I feel it in my body every day, but I'm terrified of what comes next. I'm afraid of the money, the loneliness, and starting over at this age. I keep telling myself I'll wait until I'm ready, but I don't think that day is coming. How do you take the first step when staying feels safer, but leaving feels necessary?" And I think that, you hit on some of this, Olivia. And I think one important thing to know to this writer is there's a whole world of us out here, right? Like ready to welcome you. Like I don't think loneliness is as much an issue as people really think it is.
I agree with you. And I think that there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Right. And so I think that there's a lot of patriarchal messaging about how women are going to be so lonely. I have yet to talk to a woman who's very lonely after divorce, but really enjoys being alone after divorce. And I would say, my first step for anybody is always go talk to a divorce coach. They can help you really sort through some of those emotions and figure out what you want and plan a strategy. You can talk to me. I offer free consultations and connect you to divorce coaches, but that's a great place to start. Even for people, like I always say, therapy is a great place to start too. If therapy feels daunting, go to a divorce coach or a relationship coach and say, I'm really going back and forth. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. And again, when you can plan, I think that often people, women especially, view planning before leaving as a manipulative tactic, but it's actually really, really like a clarity building activity. And so, you may plan and then decide I'm not going to leave for a year, and that's fine too, or whatever, but at least have a plan in motion with somebody that knows a little bit more about divorce than you, and it will help empower you.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time, right? Planning in silence. That's why I became a coach, because I made so many mistakes because I just didn't know any better. And I thought women have been in the dark and have to be educated, right?
Yeah.
So many things. So I think that's really, really important. Before we wrap up, Olivia, is there anything I forgot that you want to add or talk about?
No, I just, I want to remind people that like divorce is an expansion. It's an abundance in your life. And it's not that you're going to be, yes, things are going to change, and any legal issues are not going to be fun, right? Whether it's a car issue or a house issue or a marriage issue. Anytime you involve lawyers, you're spending money. But the other side of divorce is so empowering. And I always say divorce is like the midlife, wake up and move that most women really probably should have, because we're not the same women that we were when we were 25, 26 years old. And you're definitely not going to be alone. There's so many groups and people to support you, and take advantage of that.
Yeah, I always say that I've never heard a woman say she regrets her divorce. I have heard many guys say, I wish I'd done it sooner, right? And, I've had clients who are in their 70s, and I say, you know what? You're not 95. Not that 95 is bad these days. You could get divorced at 95. But, do it now if it's something in your heart and in your soul. And I think you've demonstrated today, Olivia, that it truly is a power move to restart and, refresh, right? So Will you tell everybody how they can reach you?
Sure. So I do offer totally free 15-minute Zoom calls. And you can book that on the website or on my Instagram. You can reach me on Instagram at Olivia Howell. Super easy. I respond to every DM myself, so it's confidential. You can say hi. And then you can, of course, go to freshstartsregistry.com and browse all of our experts for free. Amy's on there. We have 150 plus experts, and we don't gatekeep anything. So you can browse the experts. You can get in touch with them on your own volition. There's hundreds of blog posts. We have 3 free ebooks. There's so much support for you. And if you can't find it, you let us know and we'll find it for you.
Yeah, great. And just a reminder, everybody, I do free 15-minute coaching consultations too that you can book on my website, freedomwarrior.info. And I help women before, during, and after divorce, and also women going through that fresh start, a big life transition. Sometimes women will come to me 5 years out of a divorce and they've just been in survival mode, right? And it's time to start a new career, do something new. So you can find more resources on my website, like my proactive playbook for divorce and divorce decoded course on there. So thank you so much for being here, Olivia. And here's to fresh starts in the new year, everybody.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks for listening to Girl Wake Up. I'm your host, Amy Polacko. If this episode woke something up in you, don't let it fade. Share it with a friend who needs to hear it, leave a review, and keep this conversation going. Remember, no one's coming to save you, so she did.